Good luck, Chad.
Thanks.
All right, it's 11 o'clock and we're recording, guys. We'll give it a few more minutes before let everyone join. We'll give it another minute. For everybody that jumped on, we're going to get started in another minute or so. We're just letting some stragglers jump onto the bridge. What do you say, Nick? Should we kick it off?
Yep, I think it's about that time.
Okay. Anybody else jumping on can certainly slip right in. So good morning, everyone. My name is Rod Capobianco. Thank you for joining us today in our latest installment in the WHITECAP learning series. I'm really excited about today's topic because it typifies all that was experienced in 2020 and what we could apply and learn in 2021. Today, we're going to lean into the idea that a great decade is upon us, an important outtake from the change and the turmoil of 2020 that may have indeed sparked a opportunity for a modern day version of the Roaring 20s, a time sparked by technology, innovation, intelligence, and efficiency. Of course, WHITECAP and our family, we experienced the pain of the pandemic and all of the uncertainty and change that came along with it, as many of you most certainly did. What we were struck by through this course of 2020 was the many ways that resilience, resourcefulness, and determination of so many businesses that were able to keep the lights burning and began this movement of reshaping the way that business is done, the way that people are doing business. At the center of it, improving productivity through collaboration, communication tools, while enhancing security and the integrity of corporate data and intellectual property. Today's discussion, as we'll get into in a little bit, we'll shed light on some of that and in what ways businesses were able to implement some of that shaping and change. While we're working together better than ever to deliver technology to help make great experiences, 2020 taught us some really interesting and fabulous lessons that a forum like this or a panel like today can share and build on those learnings. 2021 has already started out with us learning the acceleration of change of this new world and how we can help people and business take advantage of the great promise of technical innovation. Today's format is intended to be a panel discussion. It's an exchange. Each panelist will have time to field questions and share their experience towards what they learned in technology and what and how businesses were able to exercise and utilize that and what you ultimately can learn from it. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a chat icon. We have someone manning questions. So if there's at any point through this session that you feel you want to ask a question directed to any or all of the panelists, feel free to submit a question there. Or if you wish to do so offline, you can do so at info@whitecaptech.com. That's info@whitecaptech.com. And we have someone manning that inbox. So joining me today in moderating this session is Nick Tempesta from Intelisys, the Cloud Solutions Engineer, a 24-year veteran of the cloud and technology industry. Nick has been involved in webinars with us before, so you may recognize his name if you were part of any of those. Also joining us is Gianni Castaldo, a 12-year veteran of the industry with Intelisys as a business development manager, and he will be manning the questions throughout this session. So let's meet our panelists as we get started. We have 4 subject matter experts from key industries through 2020, whose companies were instrumental in providing businesses quick and unique solutions to adjust to this shift that occurred last year. These individual companies provided solutions that allowed businesses to adjust accordingly, maintain a high level of customer service, and adjust to this sudden pivot of the pandemic and of the new normal. I think at this time I'd like to go around and we can go in reverse alphabetical order, starting with Zoom. But let's do a quick introduction of the panelists today. Ken, if you'd start for us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here with you guys. So again, my name is Ken Westerman. I'm a channel solution engineer for Zoom. Been in the industry for about almost 15 years now, and at Zoom for a little under a year, actually, be a year next month. So looking forward to a great conversation today.
Excellent. All right, great. Oren, would you go next?
Yeah. Hi, guys. Nice to meet you. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time. I am the channel sales manager, managing partnerships and working with excellent partners like Rod and so forth here at Five9. And I've been in this ecosystem for, again, probably the last 10 or so years. Been with Five9 for almost a year and looking forward to hopefully educating some people on Five9 today.
Super. And we will get to that icon over your right shoulder before the end of the call, Oren. You could explain that. Excellent. Chris, I think you're muted.
Quote of 2020, Chris, you are on mute.
No, I had internet issues, so I'm dialing in from the phone. So I'll get through it. But thank you all for joining. My name is Chris Rafford. I'm National Sales Director for Corporate Cyber Defense. We specialize in providing an all-in-one cybersecurity solution for small and medium-sized businesses. So I'm happy to share today with our guests some of the things we've seen last year and as we move forward into 2021. So thank you for joining.
Super. Glad to have you. Chad, you're up.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks everybody for joining. Chad Gagnon, Senior Channel Advisor for Evolve IP. Been with Evolve IP for 5 years, been in the industry for probably close to 30. I'm almost as old as Rod, but that's why he kept me for last.
Yeah.
Evolve IP is focused to allow anyone to work anywhere on any device more productively and more securely, and we'll get into that later. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely, we will. Certainly instrumental. All 4 organizations here were key to a lot of what businesses adjusted to, and we're going to take a deep dive into that. But as we get started, I felt it was important for those that are joining to understand a little bit more about WHITECAP as we take a dive in today's discussion. So just spend a minute on it for those that you aren't aware. WHITECAP is a vendor neutral technology advisor. We're a technology solutions provider. And as a company, we have access to well over 150 different technologies and technology company solutions. The unique thing about WHITECAP is that we aren't beholden to any one of these companies. And so we're able to provide an independent assessment. And what we like to say is match the right solution to the right initiative when it comes to designing and deploying various products and services. We bring a unique way of thinking and a new approach to design by understanding customers' needs, the business need, and tailoring that into a solution, and then inviting, like we have today, the providers that fit that so that businesses could get an understanding of what and who's out there that might be able to help them. With access to over some plus 100 different providers, our delivery can be domestic and international. So depending on where businesses have locations, where their employees might be, we're able to deliver solutions across the globe. Total accountability, that's a big thing with WHITECAP, and whether that's from solution design to vendor selection to implementation and remediation throughout the term of the agreement, we're accountable with WHITECAP Technicare ServiceNow lifecycle oversight, which takes the responsibility off of the customer and puts it on us when they so choose. In short and in ending, our business depends on the success of our customers, and that's what the approach that we take with businesses every day. So having said that and having given that a little bit of a chat, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to bring us all together, and we're going to start our panel discussion. And we're going to keep in the theme of starting with Zoom. Ken, we're going to kick you off, and everyone's going to get the same question to start. 2020, what did you learn? What did Zoom learn? That was a verb last year, by the way.
we definitely were a verb. I think, what we learned was that, people weren't really prepared for what was going to happen in 2020, right? I don't think people understood quite really the power of working from home was going to do, and people were panicked. And I think what Zoom learned, especially me, was that, we had the tools that were out there, right? Zoom had the right tools in place to help customers continue to work from home seamlessly and to be able to continue to do business without, any or maybe limited interruption to what they were looking to do in the first place. And I think we learned that, people could be as productive, and I'll use just Zoom that instance, right? Zoom, has 17 global offices, and, shutting them all down to work from home for the last, now 11 months, we didn't miss a beat, right? Everyone's seen, this global pandemic has really shot us to the front, and Zoom hasn't taken a step back, right? The gas has been on for the full time, and, all of us work from home now in the company, at least until June of this year, if not longer. And for us, it's been, how do you prepare for that? And I think no one was actually prepared for it, but I think Zoom did a great job in kind of seeing what the future was going to be and kind of building out our ecosystem and infrastructure to support our customers and ourselves, during a time like this.
Hey, Ken, you actually brought up, you said we weren't prepared for this. And this is like that crystal ball moment. Do you think we're prepared now, or is there still, I guess, stuff that we need to work on because maybe we're going to shift to this work at home thing for the foreseeable future?
I mean, I think, that's a really big question, Nick. And I think, honestly, we're not prepared for it yet, right? I think there are areas in our country that still don't have internet that's capable of supporting certain things like work from home in certain cases, right? So I think there's those issues. I think, cybersecurity now needs to get a big look at, right? When you're in the office, that's one thing to be secure. When you work from home, it's something very different to be secure. And I think just the whole cloud mentality, I think, a lot of companies still aren't 100% in the cloud. And I think that's definitely something that we need to think about, right? This is a once in a lifetime pandemic, hopefully, but there will be other things that drive us to work from home in the future, whether it's snowstorms or, wurricanes or wherever it is, wherever you live. And I don't think people are actually prepared enough for it. And I think we, as a group of consultants and industry leaders, need to be able to, on the forefront, thinking about what is the next thing that's going to happen and how do you resolve that so that you're not going to break the bank next time, right? And I think for us, there's so many things, infrastructure aside, that we're just not prepared for it yet. But I think companies like Zoom and Evolve and IP and everybody, we're doing the right jobs and being those forethought leaders and pushing them to say, hey, look, along with WHITECAP, to say, guys, let's be smart. Let's start thinking about what the future actually is. And I think we're not prepared for it yet.
Ken, you actually kind of bring a segue to the next question that was part of the opening for everybody, and that's scenario planning. And so it sounds like our experience at WHITECAP and a lot of yours might have been that people weren't really prepared, maybe to a small degree, some not at all, some a little more than others. Should 2021 be the year of scenario planning? And how do businesses go about that? If we're looking at last year and looking ahead for what might be next, scenario planning, do we need to invest more in it? And how would someone like Zoom help businesses go about that?
I mean, I think the answer is definitely yes, right? I think you need to start thinking through, what scenarios might be out there for working from home, or for them going back and working in the office as well. People, again, as I mentioned, Zoom can work with up to 45%, issues with your circuit, but still not all, people can actually do that, right? Some people, I have a house in Vermont, right? I have a 25 down, 1 meg up connection in Vermont. That's not great, but Zoom can work there, right? But I had to think about, how do I get a desk in that house? What do I do now, right? How am I comfortable working up there? And so, there's just all kinds of things that you need to be thinking through for those scenarios. And Zoom is doing that now. We're on the forefront of thinking through, okay, like with Zoom Phone, right? How do you now get a better soft phone experience, right? And Zoom Phone was released 2 years ago, but we did over 425 releases to Zoom Phone just last year alone, right? How does that work? How are we improving our chat feature functionality? How are we trying to improve our bandwidth or data latency and things of that nature? And so we're looking to always improve those things to make that experience better, so that every scenario you can come up with, Zoom can be a fit for you in the future.
You brought something up there, and it's a good question to ask. So we all knew Zoom at the onset, leading up to the pandemic, and then at the beginning of the pandemic, as this online video collaboration tool. Just quickly, in a minute or less, because we're running on time on this part, what else is it that Zoom does? You mentioned phone. Can you elaborate that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, Zoom overall has a full PBX communications platform with standalone features, but we're really proud of the fact that we did release Zoom Phone actually 2 years and a week ago today as a GA product, and in that time we've actually had over 1 million seats of Zoom Phone sold and deployed in a course of 7 quarters. So Zoom Phone is definitely taking off for us. 1 million seats is a massive number, but it doesn't just stop there, right? Zoom Meetings, of course, we're that verb in everyone's lexicon now, but we also offer a really robust chat feature functionality product, a great webinar series tool like we're using today. We also offer things like Zoom Rooms and connectors, so you can actually bridge in, once you can go back into the office, bridge in older technology along with Zoom to have a really robust Zoom feature meeting. So, we're trying to kind of encompass that full PBX along with a full developer suite of APIs and SDKs on the backside too, to help out with, bridging and other technology.
Okay, thank you for that. Good. All right, we're going to move on to our next panelist, Oren, 5'9". We'll start the same question. 2020, what did 5'9" learn?
So what did 5'9" learn, right? I thought about this question a little bit, and it's sort of, I'm going to kind of answer it in a different way, right? It's not so much that we learned, it's not so much that we learned a ton. It's more that I think cloud services and cloud contact center in particular were validated, right? And people ask, well, hey, why did, what happened when all this, were you guys, just a beneficiary in the right place at the right time because of cloud services and so forth? And it's like, the answer is not really. It's this stuff was always there and it was always pertinent. It just accelerated trends that were already in place, really. And that's what Gartner says, and others as well, is that cloud services were already there. So I think that we learned that cloud contact centers are the only way to go, right? I mean, to put that really in layman's terms, I don't think people are buying the big heavy boxes, and the labor workforce and anything with geographic restrictions are just completely off the table at this point. So it was funny when it first happened. I think everybody here, I'm sure, went through the same wave, right? It was like in March, oh my God, I got to sign these contracts so we can get up for cloud. Then there was like this 3-month pause where everybody was like, oh my God, are we going to have to lay people off? Are we going to go out of business? Whatever. And then things start to pick up as normal again, right? I think to Ken's point, it started to validate that the life went on, right? And people are still can work from home, and these businesses are still fluctuating. You look at the stock market. I'm not sure that's a great reflection of the economy, but at the same time, I mean, people are moving on. Businesses are still going, and I think we learned that resiliency is sort of a core human instinct, if you will. And cloud contact center is certainly the front of customer experience as a whole.
Yeah. Well, to your point, just quick, Nick, it's
Yeah.
We're not sure if Wall Street's reflective of Main Street at this juncture, but certainly part of why the roaring 20s, because people adapted and started to institute these technologies that everyone here has and can offer, and that's what led us to today's discussion. So that was good. Nick, sorry, go ahead.
No, you said something that kind of resonated with me. You said cloud contact centers are the way to go versus purchasing maybe your own contact center. Can you elaborate more on why a company should look towards a cloud contact center versus building it and supporting it in their own data center?
Yeah, because a couple reasons, right? I think that when we talk about contact center in general, it's really a customer experience conversation, right? So we go when you're seeing all this rush to get people online, right, and get their e-commerce platforms and stuff like that up, right? Under Armour is a huge Five9 customer, and when you go to Under Armour and if you go to put a $100 pair of sweatpants into your cart and that transaction is clunky and you can't get through to somebody, or you can't figure out the size, you can't ask a question. I mean, there's 300 other retailers out there that are doing the same thing that can buy it, right? So that customer experience is more important than ever. And Nick, where I'm going with this is the conversation is more like, hey, look, tell me what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve, and then we're going to prescribe the solution that fits into that, right? It's not like, oh, hey, look, you got 100 agents, you need 100 phones, you need like this cookie cutter, last 20 years hardware response. It's like, all right, cool. You have all these point solutions for CRM. You have solutions for IVA. You have solutions for different bots and things like that. What if you could just take all that stuff, whiteboard it up and say, boom, there's Five9 right there. So I think effectively the conversation is just so much more evolved, right? And hosting stuff in the data center is so limited. And, I'd be hard pressed to see a whole lot of customers that are in the engagements that we're in. A hardware on-premise model is 99% of the time not even being considered in any way, shape, or form.
So we're going to dive a little deeper into these later, but just a quick question, just for the audience that may be not familiar with contact centers specifically. Maybe they have a PBX or UCaaS solution that they're utilizing as lightweight contact center. What is that? Why is it so beneficial to a business? And, maybe try and keep this like a minute and a half. I know that's tough to do, but
that's hard to do. There is no 30-second elevator pitch for contact center, but to keep it simple, right? Again, we talk about customer experience. Contact center is not necessarily 1,000 people in a boiler room like you see in the movies, right? Chained to the desk. It's very much every way that you're interacting with your customers. So if you think about when you have an interaction, so I used Under Armour earlier, I'll use Teladoc for another one. There's another big Five9 customer, right? So if anybody's used that in the last 6 months, I know I have. When you launch Teladoc, you go and you put your insurance information in, you hit go, it connects you with a video interaction with a doctor. The doctor's on the other end. You say, hey, look, I got a little cut here. I know I just need antibiotics. Can you take a look? Doctor says, okay, great. What prescription would you like? Where would you like it sent? I want to CVS down the street. And then, 20 minutes later, I get a text from CVS saying my prescription's ready, right? So that sequence of events is all driven by contact center, right? We power those interactions, we power that customer experience, and again, it's our CEO coins it the new front door of the business, right? The first interaction that you have with a business, a lot of times nowadays, there's a contact center sitting there. It's just a matter of how you're interacting with it. So,
Warren, so that's a great illustration of two, larger corporations. Is Five9 seeing that scale? Everyone likes to use those big box companies, big brand names as the example. It's great. We kind of get it. How about, are you seeing it trickle down, into medium-sized biz where they're taking advantage of kind of the service offering that's available and something like that?
Yeah, for sure. So let me give you an example, right? So banks, right? Banks all have call centers, right? Traditional customer experience in a bank has been you walk in, there's some guy sitting there in a tie that greets you, that points you to the teller that you want to go to so I can get my bank check and leave, right? That's like what customer experience in the banking industry has been. Now, people are moving more and more online, right? There's all these online, savings accounts and high interest savings accounts, all that stuff online. So when you can, if you can just call in and you can have that interaction quickly, right? Maybe I just want to check my balance. When I call up and instead of hitting 0 100 times, maybe I just put a prompt there that says, hey, look, how can I help you today? What are you calling about? Right. And even though there's 5 specialists on the back end, I can route that call correctly. A script's going to pop up and say, hey, look, Warren Wentworth is calling because he wants to apply for a new home loan. Right. And then when I answer that call, I say, okay, hi, we see you're applying for a home loan. How can I help you? Taking the friction out of the transaction between the consumer and the business is really where the whole thing lands. So banking is one of our biggest verticals, everything all the way down to, or everything down to 1, 2, 3, 4 seats. Small regional banks are doing this stuff and they're spending a lot of money on it because they're all trying to, transition their customer experience, especially now that people are, a little spooked to go in places and so forth.
Right. Popular word, customer experience. Good. Thank you. Chad, Evolve, we're gonna toss you the same question. What did Evolve learn in 2020? What did they see?
More than anything, we learned that looking ahead as an organization, we were on the right track. As everyone else has said here, being in the cloud, everyone knew it was there. It was just a matter of were people ready for it? And this forced everyone to be ready. So the biggest thing we learned was locations don't matter anymore, right? Where it was always, hey, I got to bring this amount of bandwidth here to cover these desktops, this amount of people at this location, not an issue anymore. To Oren's point, right? Contact centers are no longer in offices. They'll probably never go back. We're in a nice position here because we cover kind of a little bit of what everyone is talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I cover the collaboration side, I cover the contact center side, but I also cover the desktop side. And that was the big boom. But aside from collaboration and the explosion of Zoom and the explosion of Teams, it's desktop services. It's being able to manage that. And clients were definitely not ready for that. And, a lot of IT departments got a pass. Hey, let's Band-Aid things together. Let's get things working, like Oren said. After that 3-month pause, people were trying to figure out. But now 2021, to your point, Rod, is really, if you weren't planning for 2021 or beyond at the end of 2020 and forward, you're in trouble because organizations are going to give their IT departments a pass that first time. But now you got to be prepared for what happens next.
Hey, Chad, you kind of said something very similar to what Ken said is, I want to say companies weren't prepared. So I want to ask the same question that I asked Ken. Do you think that companies are prepared now after going through a full year of this, or is there still work to be done? And if there's still work to be done, where do you see that kind of, living?
So I think a very small percentage are prepared because some were prepared ahead of time, right? I have a client that I talk to a lot that it was a mortgage organization, right? And they use us for their desktop and for their voice services, and they use 5 9s for their contact center. And when they were sent home, they didn't miss a beat. They got on whatever device they needed to and got in securely. So I would say under 10% are prepared. Everyone is aware, but everyone is planning now. And they're all in different stages depending on where they were to begin with. So what we see is the move from the PBX to the collaboration tool, right? And the collaboration tool is really deciding now what the phone system's going to be, right? You have Zoom, who had Zoom Phone exploding, right? You had Teams roll out last year. We started working with that a year or two before that. That's exploded by over 50% of the logins before. So I think they're not prepared. They're prepared to plan.
Yeah.
And this year, Q1, Q2, I think organizations have to have the plan in place and start executing on it, which will take a while.
So if that company or that organization that's planning a plan and you're thinking about that, what are some areas should I, going off my head? To be prepared for this if it continues to grow or continues to do the path that we're on.
I think the key focus is focusing on how your employees are communicating back to headquarters, so to speak, right? The virtual headquarters. It's how are they able to work successfully and productively today? So a lot of companies had VPNs in place, right? VPNs are good, but it's a one-to-one and it gets very costly, and they weren't made to handle all the apps that are out there today that people are using. So it's looking at things like that. It's looking at, are all our tools SaaS-based? Do we have some hardware-based tools? How do we make sure that our workers can get to everything they need to from any device? Because that's where it's come to now. You have to be able to access everything you need literally from any device.
Interesting. And so far, Chris, we'll get to you in a second, but the trend in the conversation, certainly because COVID, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. It seems the theme is having to do with not being in the brick and mortar office much anymore. It's using some sort of device and being available remote. Interesting. Awesome. Great. Chris, last but not least, and I think a great question for you. What did Corbett learn in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent question. One that's very thought-provoking. Obviously, we specialize in cybersecurity mainly for small and medium-sized businesses. So, maybe not play in the big box space as indicated before, which is great. And there, great companies on this panel that do work for other large companies. We're mainly on the smaller end. So we see some things that are very much been described here so far through the panel in terms of the dispersed workforce, the remote workforce, and the security controls that need to be in place to accommodate that, or if they're in place, make sure they're up to date, or if they're not, implement them to make sure that workforce that may be working from a vacation home or from a mother-in-law's house, whatever the case might be, that they're able to continue to do business, like we said. So it's not only the digital transformation that moves these call centers and so forth, as described earlier, to the service, but we have to look at this pandemic and what it's been doing. So a couple of things that we learned, when we deal in the small and medium-sized business space like we do, 93% of the time when they're affected by a breach or a ransomware attack is through email. And so we have to then look, as we learned this year, and theme of the question is that people are distracted. I mean, think about yourself, anybody on this call. I've got the dog barking, I've got Amazon coming 3 times a day, DoorDash, I mean, you name it. You can easily get distracted. And what happens is, with business email spoofing being on a rise in 2020, and by business email spoofing, I mean, the email from your CEO, a fake invoice being sent to the accounting department, things of that nature. They seem to be getting through more and more, I think, because people aren't paying as much attention. It's not like last year, for example, where if my accounting manager sent me an invoice, I might see him or her walk by my office and I could double check that. We don't have the liberty to do that. So employees that are working from home need to be particularly careful around things like phishing, spear phishing, and business email spoofing. So what we've learned as a result of that is that awareness and training is really important. Even as a very small organization, if you can do regular phishing campaigns, make sure people who click on fake emails are being remediated through a training program and being held accountable for that, you can take a huge step going forward in 2021 with just something as simple as an awareness and training program, which WHITECAP offers in a variety of different ways, and we can help with that as well. So if you're currently not doing phishing campaigns on a regular basis, that would be one of those things that we learned is tremendously valuable. The other aspect to that dispersed or remote workforce would be the VPN connections. Excuse me. How are they connecting in? Are they just using whatever network? They might even be on their neighbor's network for all we know. So what are we doing to secure that connection? Implementing a VPN program with some network monitoring to make sure you have eyes on your dispersed or remote workforce is a very easy solution. And again, something Rod and his team can help everybody put in place. But those are the two main things that jump out for me for 2020 was, again, the phishing awareness needs to be heightened through testing and making sure that these remote connections are secure.
Hey, Chris, just a quick question, and this is kind of basic, but companies can, I guess, envision cybersecurity efforts as being an insurance policy, maybe a little lax towards it. Should we consider security as an insurance policy, or should this be actually more of a line item, as it's more of a necessity versus a nice to have? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so if we look at the NIST cybersecurity framework, it starts with identification, protection, detection, response, and then ultimately, if need be, the fifth and final would be recovery. Actual cyber insurance or insurance to protect against these kinds of things would be in that fifth and final category. So one way I would look at it is your cybersecurity posture, the way that you approach security should be more in lines with like the way that you eat and exercise your life, with your life insurance being the backup plan. So, you know, and then what we've seen, again, just another thing that we saw in 2020, and it's continued in 2021 already, is that if you want to get cybersecurity insurance as your only real security control so that you're backed up there, they're going to require that you have security controls in place even to get the insurance now. So, you know, I don't want to look at it as an insurance necessarily per se. I mean, it certainly helps to protect, but we have to think about other things that fall into play there. We think of insurance as filling in a gap, a risk that maybe you can't fill on your own. So a cyber insurance policy, you know, might be there. But when it comes to making sure that you have the right security controls, even as a small and medium-sized business, you have to think about things like compliance, what your vendors and customers want you to be doing. And so it may be that you can't exist as a business unless you're actually putting the right security controls in place.
Interesting. Awesome.
Thank you,
Good
Chris.
answer. We're going to take a deep.
I don't want to interrupt you. We just got a question that was emailed in from the audience. The question is, do we ever go back to normal, or are businesses going to continue to operate like this after the vaccination? If so, what are the things we need to start to consider?
Well, that's a good question. Let's go in reverse. We'll start with Chris and go the other way this time. Chris, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great question. You know, look, it's hard to say. I think what we've seen over the last few years has been certainly a lot more capability with our friends from Zoom, you know, making it easy not only connect with your friends and your parents, but also your work colleagues, right? So, you know, it's getting to the point where people are maybe reconsidering that. Now, a year and a half ago, my company built a $29 million office building on Lake Norman in North Carolina. I'm pretty sure they would like to see people back in that building. But going forward, you know, it's kind of like, well, you know, maybe this is the way we work from now on for a variety of reasons. Who knows how long, and if it is even dependent on the status of the pandemic. But regardless of what that case might be, we still need to prepare for security being an increasingly important aspect of a business from a risk perspective going forward. Again, not only from maybe stuff being stolen or altered, maybe a ransomware attack, which is devastating for a small business, and some kind of compliance violation. So you have to evaluate your own business and say, is this just really something we're spending on just in case? Or is this something that that is almost a requirement, particularly when we consider people may not be going back to buildings in the future, and let's prepare ourselves to make sure they are as secure working remotely as they would be in our own building. Yeah,
good answer. Certainly security was, the awareness and the attention was heightened last year. Good. Chad, you want Gianni to reread that question?
Sure.
All right, Chad, the question is, do we ever go back to normal, or are businesses going to continue to operate like this after the vaccination? If so, what are things we need to start to consider?
I don't know, everyone says the new normal. I don't think things go back to the way they were before. Look at the big cities, right? People are moving out in droves. New York City, I'm outside of New York. It's a ghost town now. People don't want to go there. So I don't think people are going to go back. Like Chris, we started construction last year on a new headquarters in King of Prussia, and it opened up in March. And I don't think there's ever been more than 10 people in the whole place. So I don't think people are going to go back. I think they are planning for that. But the key things that you need are being able to collaborate, being able to manage all of that, right? It's easy to manage the users and their devices and how they're accessing and all of that stuff when they're all kind of local to you. But now everyone's dispersed. So you need an easy tool to be able to manage how people are accessing. Are they having issues? What are those issues? And being able to monitor and manage that. So I think it's number one, connecting to the infrastructure and being able to securely and work like you're working in the office with the infrastructure. That can be done via desktop as a service. That can be done a number of different ways that Evolve IP does it. And then I think after that, it's your collaboration and contact center. As Oren said, contact center is huge. Contact center before COVID was already dispersing, right? They were already going off-site. Very rare you would see these locations like the old days 5 years ago when you'd have 100, 150 people in one location taking calls. They were already going home. So a lot of the customers that had the larger contact centers were prepared for this because they were already doing it. It's the small to medium size that Chris was talking about that weren't ready for that. And they were using old technology, trying to make it through to where they were. And they had to scramble. How am I going to do this? How am I going to manage? And they did a lot of band-aiding, but now they're starting to make those decisions, whether it's an overlay contact center to try to use what they're using today, or unifying with the collaboration tool that you're using. Being able to do that is going to be huge going forward.
Interesting. Good answer. Oren, your perspective on Gianni's question.
Yeah, so like everybody else, we just finished and broke ground on a new headquarters in San Ramon. We're going to have about 1,000 employees in there. So I think it's going to vary role to role, right? I mean, our workers, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I'm fiending for some in-person activity, right? I think it's going to be, yeah, sure, we're going to have the tools to do remote work, and no doubt people aren't going to need to live in the city to do their day-to-day jobs. But I think, roles within the organization are going to vary, right? Like your developers and scrums and things like that are probably, there's some value to having people sitting in the conference room banging ideas around, right? And I think from a 5-9 stance internally, our CEO has said multiple times that he's going to, encourage people to come back, right? And not going to force anybody, but of our employees, where they sent out a survey internally, and I think it was like 60% are ready to go back. I think it's going to be personal choice, and I also think it's going to be roles, right? I think, from a sales perspective, a 1-hour Zoom demo, no offense, Ken, is great. But I think when you can get in there and actually read the room and build some rapport and meet people in person and things like that, you really can't put a price tag on those kind of interactions. So I think it's going to really vary, role to role within an organization, but I don't think the office is gone, no, by any means.
Okay, interesting. Lastly, Ken, saved it for you.
I'd have to agree with Oren. I think, again, no offense to Zoom, but I think a 1-hour Zoom demo isn't always great. But I do think, I'm really into stats and numbers and things. And, Gartner and Dell have released a whole bunch of reports over the last 6-12 months talking about what the Gen Z workforce will look like, what's going to happen in the future. And, they say things like 51% of the population will be freelance workers by 2025. Well, that usually means not sitting in your office. And it's probably more like 2022 at this point in time, right? As the pandemic has kind of gone and keeps going on. And I think, Chad made a good point about the ability to collaborate, right? Like you need that collaboration to be there. Yes, or in the case of sales, reading rooms are a really good thing. And honestly, I want to go back to the office too. But I think, most people are saying it's not a work from home, it's a work from anywhere conversation, right? It's about where can I go and work? Where can I be most productive? That could be a Starbucks, that could be my office, that could be my home. And I think that's what's going to change. I don't think it's going to be, and again, Zoom, right? We were supposed to open up 4 new offices this year. We got an email last week saying they're all on hold until this is over. So I think, as we think about it, sure, we'll probably open up 3 of the 4, maybe we'll open up all 4, but they'll be smaller. I think now things like WeWork could come into play and Regis comes into play. Other things like that are going to start coming into play more and more as you want to have that collaboration, but maybe not want to be in the office full time. And I think the work from anywhere concept is going to really take hold very soon.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Great insight. Great answer. Certainly technology has advanced the timeline on a lot of this, and it certainly has advanced the ability to accommodate what has in store for whether it is remote or work from home. And so great insight, great feedback, great dialogue. Now we're going to take one step further and take a little deeper dive with each of you guys as panelists. And we have about 10 minutes left before we open it up for question and answer. So we're going to try to keep this to a 2-minute time frame. So Ken, you ended, so we're going to come back to you really quick and hit you with a question, and then we'll go again in reverse order. I think the big one is Zoom being the platform and what people have learned in the past 12 months about it has been useful as a business tool. Really slick, really awesome to conduct a meeting, get online and collaborate. What other ways have you seen the evolution of Zoom in such short amount of time really help organizations out? The adoption of this platform, the integration of the collaboration. Talk a little bit more about Zoom and its ability to really get deep into the tentacles of a company and their service offerings.
Yeah, again, I think Zoom has been, we've definitely benefited a lot from the pandemic, and I think good and bad, right? I think though Zoom has the ability to get that stickiness because it's so easy to use our product, right? If you think about it, right, everyone has been using Zoom, and everyone, I'll just say that colloquially speaking, has been using Zoom now for the past 12 months. And people use it because it's so easy to use, right? We benefited and also got hurt because of everyone using it back in April and May when all the Zoom bombings were happening. Everyone was, posting I'm talking to my grandkids online, and people tried to bomb all those things, right? And, good, bad, or in between, Zoom took a step back and said, how do we address that? How do we continue to work and function and help people not get Zoom bombed? And so Zoom is taking everything we're learning from the enterprise, from the SMB, mid-market, and mom and pods, and making our platform that much more secure, that much more able to kind of keep pushing and churning things out. But I think, again, it's that ease of use which makes it so sticky, right? And I always tell the story of my 98-year-old grandfather back in April was so sad he couldn't see his grandkids for our birthdays. And so I sent him an iPad with Zoom on it. And I thought this would be a nightmare of nightmares. He's 98, it'll never work. And within 30 seconds, he was on talking to us. He now schedules his own Zoom meetings with all of his grandkids because he can, and that's just how easy it is for him, right? So at 98, if he can get the technology down, anyone can. And I think that's what really makes Zoom so powerful, is that anyone can use the product and everyone wants to use the product. It's just so easy. And I think on top of that, then it's things like, from an enterprise standpoint, how do we interact with people like Five9s or people like anybody else that's out there, right? We have great APIs and great, partnerships with other companies that help make your experience that much more robust whilst using Zoom. And I think those are kind of the big things that make us really sticky in the enterprise space.
Great, thank you. Oren, cloud's a big subject, cloud's a big topic. As Chad had mentioned, if people weren't prepared for it in 2020, they're starting to plan and prepare for it this year. What kind of companies did you see last year as new clients migrate to the cloud in 2020, and what are you seeing this year?
Yeah, I think, we saw last year, we obviously saw a lot of panic buying, no doubt, right? I mean, that was just sort of the nature of the beast. But again, like I talked about banking, a lot of healthcare, and a lot of retail. Again, when I talked about that term customer experience, I think it's a little bit of a buzzword, but at the same notion, it's really a pivot, right? And I think that customers with call centers in general, if you look at some of the restraints moving back, I think Chad mentioned this quickly, is you used to open a call center, a popular move was to open one outside of a college campus, right? Because the labor's cheap and you can just hire kids and you can kind of deal with the turnover and attrition and all that kind of stuff. customers that have call centers now, I mean, if you're remote and they're in the cloud, they can be anywhere, right? Your hiring pool all of a sudden goes national or international for that matter, right? You don't necessarily have to hang on to that one area and try to find help in that one space. So I think, again, a lot of healthcare, a lot of insurance companies are a big one, right? A good example is that company Lemonade. I don't know if people have seen that before, but they're, if you go to their website, you can basically buy all your insurance and everything else entirely, without talking to a person, right? And while some people don't like that human interaction, Ken talked about Gen Z. I mean, that's how this stuff is all going to work, right? And Five9 is powering that interaction. So it all comes down to sort of this customer experience, and these businesses are trying to get out ahead of some of these trends. So again, insurance, banking, healthcare are sort of our big three, quite frankly, to highlight a few.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chad, you had mentioned earlier in one of your explanations how collaboration is driving the phone system, or collaboration is driving the future of the phone system. Now's a great time to elaborate on that, would you?
Sure. So, as the folks at Zoom have said as well, right? When the panic hit and everyone went home, they didn't know what to do. There was a couple easy options out there. At Evolve IP, we started planning in 2018 to kind of hook our wagon to Microsoft Teams. We have been a Teams Gold partner and a CSP for many years already, but really making that migration to support the Teams voice aspect and bringing the features to the table that weren't there before. So you have the Zoom, you have the Teams, they're really the top two that people are using. Like Zoom, Teams made it so, Microsoft made it so easy to use Teams. They gave it to everyone for free. They'd already won the presentation battles, right? If you're using any Office products, right, you're using Microsoft. So it just made sense that you're going to start chatting first with Teams, and then you're going to get comfortable with it. And then you'll be like, oh, look, we can do an internal conference call, no cost. Do that kind of stuff. And then you get more comfortable with it and start using it more and more. And then it's like, why do I need this phone on my desk? Why do I need, this Avaya or this block that's at the headquarters? Or why do I need any of the other providers if I'm living within one collaboration tool? Now, Zoom has answered that question, right, as well, with building that platform and bringing Zoom Phone into it. Microsoft took another route, right? They said, you know what? We're going to build the platform. I want to stay on the software side, but we're going to allow other providers to bring the level of service that we can't bring and bring those extra features that we can't bring to the table, and let them manage the phone services, so to speak.
Okay, good. Got it. Before we go to Chris, Chad, 30 seconds or less. What kind of trend are you seeing? You made reference to the desk phone. I'm putting words in your mouth, kind of going away. What kind of trends are you seeing in them just using the Teams software as their system, as opposed to having the physical handset on the desk?
So you have the old school folks, the older folks like us and older, who still like to have that phone. A great feature that we offer.
Pardon me on the like us, Chad. Pardon me on that.
A great feature we've offered and built into this is clients have typically used Polycom phones or your typical SIP phones. You're able to reuse those in Teams if you want a phone. Now, there are Teams phones, but the experience on a Teams phone is no different than the experience on your desktop or on your mobile device. It's the exact same thing. It's an Android OS underneath the phone, and it's just that on the screen there. So we're seeing more and more, less and less phones, I should say, more and more folks not
greater adoption of the software.
Yeah, exactly. And
okay, great.
The pandemic really sped that up. The folks here on this call, we've all been working virtual for years. We've all been working without phones for years. So we were, prepared for this, for lack of a better term, and used to working this way. But it's a big change for companies that were always.
Yep. Agreed. All right, Chris, saved the last for you. We've talked about security. Everyone has kind of made some reference to it in the work from home. VPNs were brought up at some point. You've touched on some of the ways that, people could practice better security in the way of the awareness of phishing and so forth. Security gaps in 2020 and what companies can do about it in 2021.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'll again point out, as I did before, is for any small business owner that may be joining us here today, you evaluate whether or not you have any compliances that you need to adhere to. One of the big things I'll see cracking down in 2021 is on the compliance side. HIPAA fines have increased. Any kind of sensitive data that you may have. California has its own law. I mean, so, you're going to continue to see more and more. We work a lot in the Department of Defense space. Our parent company works for the Missile Defense Agency as a contractor. All the contractors in the DoD space are now on heightened levels of implementing security. So, and it's not just the regulatory bodies. It could be a vendor that you want to do business with. Maybe you were small enough where you're like, well, nobody's going to really bother me. Well, if you want to do business with a big company, that big company in 2021 is now going to mandate that you have some level of security that they're comfortable with, or they're not going to do business with you. So there's a couple of quick things you could do, and Rod and his team at WHITECAP can certainly, I would encourage you to reach out to them if you have concerns about where your security stands now. But very simple things like we've already touched on: virtual private network setup, very easy and cost effective to do. Employee awareness and training and phishing campaigns. It can be managed for you, and it keeps a culture of security at top of mind so that employees are not clicking on things because they don't want to get in trouble. That's going to help you in 2021. The last thing I'll leave you with, and again, available through WHITECAP, is multi-factor authentication. One of the simplest things that a business can do to make sure that their users are secure. Everybody worries about passwords getting stolen and stuff. They're not going to have your password and your phone. So if we have multi-factor authentication, it might be a little bit of a hurdle from the user standpoint, but it's one of the single easiest and most cost-effective things a small business can do to improve their security posture.
Hey, Chris, 30 seconds. The multi-factor. Is the password dead? Is that idea of having just a password moving forward, even in our personal lives, is that concept going to go away? And are we going to move to this multi-factor way of getting into our sites?
Almost certainly, Nick. I think you're seeing right now, just again, a no-cost security tool that you could use would be making sure that everybody's using passwords of at least 12 characters. It's an exponential increase in the amount of time it can be cracked when you just move one digit, like you've probably seen people make you do a character or an uppercase. All those things exponentially change how easily something can be. So now it's 12 is the minimum. Most of the time we recommend now phrases, entire sentences. My cat likes to jump on fences. That should be your password. That long. I think we're going to get to the point where you're right. There's no more password. You're going to have a single sign-on, okay? Single sign-on type of environment. I jump on my computer. I have the multi-factor authentication in, and now I have access to the applications that are associated with that. And I think that's the way business should and will be going in 2021.
Chad,
a question from the panel, Chad.
I fully agree with Chris, especially because of what we've talked about, right? Everyone
30 seconds.
is accessing from multiple devices now. So you've got to have that single sign-on with multi-factor authentication and one area to go to access all your tools. It's simple, it's cost-effective, it's a lot less costly than a lot of other things, and anyone can set that up. I mean, that was a great point, Chris.
Excellent. Great insight. Thank you. Well, guys, I can't believe it, but we made it to just about the top of the hour. And so I want to thank all of you for your time and your effort to participate in today's event. Hopefully the people that joined had found it helpful. And should anybody that joined have any questions or want to have a one-on-one conversation to explore any of these excellent partners and their services any further, certainly reach out to your account representative or hit us at info@whitecaptech.com. But again, everybody, thank you. And just as an aside, in March, there is another scheduled webinar for those that have joined. If you're interested in joining the best business tools of 2021, we'll have some folks that are participating in that as well. But again, thank you, everyone. I thought it was great. I appreciate your participation and help. And if there are questions that we didn't get to ask, certainly email them to info@Whitecap Tech, and we'll get one of these experts to get back to you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Rod. Cheers.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.